Hey there, and welcome to the Total Potential Podcast. Cole and Jake here with a sibling conversation on a topic that is coming up over and over and over again. Every client, every group, every place, every conversation, something to the effect of essentially, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And as this continues to arise in so many areas, so many conversations, I just keep thinking, like, how did we get to this place where all of us are walking around thinking, I'm not good enough?
Yeah, it's a big one. Like I said to you offline, this one is near and dear to my heart because this is, I would say, one of the bigger things that I've struggled with my whole life up until, last handful of years where it's really gotten better. But, I think a lot goes into this conversation. It's the approval of others, seeking approval of others, right? Keeping up with the Joneses, all these things that we've heard over our lives of, especially since social media has kind of kicked into play and become a thing of, looking at other people's lives and comparing yourself to that. And, that kind of that loss, I guess the art of contentment has kind of gone out the window as far as, being happy with where you're at and working for what you want. And, so there's a lot to unpack here, but I think, like you said, it's something that even if you don't want to admit it, this is something that everybody, at least for a period of their life, has for surely struggled with. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to be super honest. Like, have I been working my absolute backside off the last, like a lot of years to really grow and develop and be true to myself and all those things? Of course I have. But the fact of the matter is there's probably every single day, at least one thing happens or one, sensation will arise. And I will think to myself, well, I'm not good enough.
yeah,
I'm not the right person for that. And so, yeah, I mean, you can be doing all the work in the world under the sun. Like, I think there's something in our human nature that draws to this sensation. And part of it, I even think of like, just from a neurological perspective, our brains are wired to protect us and keep us surviving. And something about that fear that we experience, and I would say that it is fear, right? It's like, if you weren't good enough, what's going to happen? Right? Unless there's a
yeah,
consequence that you don't want to happen and there's something to feel afraid of or feel is negative, it wouldn't even be a quote unquote problem. It just would be.
yeah,
But, our brains are wired to protect us from
for sure.
like demise, right? And so I often think, just from a baseline perspective, just a human being perspective, there is something about the way we conduct ourselves because of that underlying belief of somehow I'm not good enough, that allows us to participate in society and in communities and in families and in what we pursue in ways that are neither good nor bad. They just are.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds really gray, like even as I'm saying it, I'm like, wow, I don't know. And I think that's important too. Like in this topic, like, I don't know that there is an answer other than just to say, let's dive in.
Well, yeah, and I think too. I mean, you said perfectly. I think that feeling of worthlessness is a great defense mechanism for us to use, especially when you're in a mindset of fear-based thinking, right? Of just speaking about my own life. I mean, this was that was a perfect tool to use um, in my hockey career, or even at the early stages of my business life. Of like, oh yeah, I'm not good enough to play in the NHL. I'm not good enough to start this company. That guy's way better than me, or whatever. really what I was saying to myself was like, that makes me a little bit afraid to think of like putting myself out there or doing something that, takes just an absolute obsession to conquer. Um, so that's a very easy kind of fallback thing. And I think, instead of, um, to the point of what you said, right? Of like, this is something that I think even when you're really dialed in and things are going good, that thought will creep into your mind. But I think the difference is when you're coming from that mindset of courage instead of fear, when you feel it or witness it, it's like, okay, game on. I'm
Yes.
pivoting now from where I was going to being obsessed with this thought that makes me afraid or makes me feel worthless. And I'm going to freaking go after that with everything I got.
Yeah. I think that's an
So,
incredibly important point, because I do think that until we identify where and why and how we experience that, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of this, our reactions are just like the conditioned response. They're not
yeah.
a conscious choice. Whereas when you have done the work to like start to realize where these things arise and how you experience them, and the situations in which they more commonly come up, instead of just being like, oh, I'm afraid of that, I'm actually going to create more distance between me and that thing because it's incredibly uncomfortable. It's a major flip. Like, oh, hello, I see you, I'm coming to you. Like,
Yeah.
watch out, I am coming for you.
Yeah.
That's a major mindset shift.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you take a step further, kind of building off what you just said of like the number one most important thing too, though, is you really do have to understand what that purpose or what your stand is in life, right? Of like having that foundational piece that then when those thoughts do come in, you can say, okay, I'm grounded in what I truly do believe, right? And then I can make my next decision from there. So, um, I think again, like speaking to my own life, that was a huge problem for me, right? Of when I was kind of between hockey and then into like this next phase of my life that I'm in now. If you would have put a gun to my head and said, "What do you stand for?" I would have not. There's no chance I would have had an answer. I did not. It was just like I don't know, just kind of waffling through life. You know, um, so I think that piece of this conversation is super important, right? And I think that's maybe what's going on in our world a little bit right now is people don't really have anything that they really stand for. They just kind of are kind of blown with the wind, right? Like here's a buzz topic today, I'm going to go down that way, and then tomorrow I'm going to go down this way, and they don't have like that firm, deep rooted like personal purpose of like what they're actually trying to do with their life, right?
Yeah.
Um, so like for me, right, that's where like the faith piece came into my life of like, all right, this is my stand, right? Like I believe in Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I believe through the reading of the Bible that right, like he made us perfect in His image. Holy crap! If I believe in that, how can I feel worthless if I actually truly believe in that?
Yeah.
Right? And it is what it is for everybody. But to me, there was a place to start of like, okay, now
Mm.
I have deep rooted stand of like, this is what I believe to my core. Now I have that kind of that strong foundation of when things challenge me, I can make those tough decisions of like, all right, we're going to lean into this feeling because there's a reason that it's happening, right?
Yeah. There's also the point where, like, as you're describing, like finding that stand and finding that reason and foundation, I think it's important to highlight that this sensation, this thought, in many ways has served us. And rather than fight against it, which actually only makes it grow, like it's like pouring, fuel on a fire, like, here you go, keep going, rage on. Instead of fighting it, if we can accept that we have that sensation, and even with that sensation, we are perfect as we are, and embrace that, like, oh, this is interesting. There's ways that I fall short of what I was created to be, but now I see it. Like, it is actually a gift to see that with your own eyes, because otherwise it's running in the background. Maybe you don't
Yeah.
notice it. Maybe you haven't identified it. But
Yeah.
it's there just cruising and informing so many decisions that you make. But something as simple as a faith or a firm groundingness in like a purpose or a particular way you want to serve or a particular practice, like even just any little piece of groundingness that can bring you inside of yourself,
Hmm.
can start to reflect that, like, I don't, there's nothing outside of me that I will ever, 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 ever need, because the whole universe freaking lives in me.
Yeah. And exactly what you said, right? Like, what are you falling short of? That's something that you put into your own life, right? Oh, my buddy from high school, he's got a multi-million-dollar business, or the neighbor down the street's got a new car. Like, you're creating like all of these things that, especially when you don't have that very firm like reason for what you're trying to do every day, right? Or the guiding thing in your life that is like driving every decision that you make. If you don't have something like that, then yeah, you do fall short, because you go on social media and you're like, oh man, they're on a cool trip, or oh, this, right? You have no idea what you haven't set a standard for yourself. You've let other people and other, influence set all that stuff for you. And then that feeling of worthlessness comes flooding in because you don't even know what you're trying to do, you
Yeah.
know? Whereas if you take the time and again, like that's the beauty of struggle, right? Of like on this, phase of my life that I'm in right now, I can truly appreciate that 4 or 5 years where I was in like a really bad spot now, because it all served the purpose to get me to where I am here,
Yeah.
right? But something happened where it was like enough is enough,
Hmm.
and that was like that trigger for me, right, to really dial into my faith, really figure out for myself, like, all right, I'm this is like, and you said it perfectly, all of this stuff is like us with us, right?
Yeah.
Every answer, everything that we need to do whatever we want in our lives, it lies within our power.
Yeah.
you know you stack that with this mindset of like, all right, like I'm going to base every decision I make through the lens of like, I'm trying to be as Christ-like as possible. No, I don't never get there, but that's the goal every day, right? To get as close to that as possible. Then when something pops up, you're like, well, I take it through that filter. It doesn't really serve me or whatever. So it's like, okay, kick it out, move on, right? Or man, this really makes me feel uncomfortable. I wonder why. Like, let's freaking go and tackle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, so again, it for surely is something that, like you said, it's a positive thing. Like we have everything that happens for a reason, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Instead
And
of being like, oh no, that
shifting,
makes me feel uncomfortable. Crap, I'm just gonna go lay in bed.
right. And shifting the mindset around what anything is available to teach us, I think, um, not only fuels the experience with like empowerment and positivity. It's like when I feel those sensations arise of like, oh, this feels bad. I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not like, what is anyone going to think about this? Like, what on the occasions when that arises, it's just like taking a step away of that. My power can never be outside of me. When I have
Yeah.
relinquished my power that exists fully in my being, and I have now tried to give it to a group of people who don't even know who I am, or to, the moms at school who might think something of me, or whatever, like whoever we're trying to relinquish that to, number one, they have no idea. Number two, they have no control over it. There's nothing they can do. And
Yeah.
so the power that I have to change my relationship with what any one thing gets to teach me, and then take action on it that comes from an internal perspective. There's no one out there who can give me worthiness. No one. Not even my husband, who adores and loves me, or my children who adore and love me. Like, there's no shortage of beautiful connected exchanges. And yet even those people cannot give me my worthiness.
Yeah.
And that's hard to accept, I think, for a lot of people, because we have been so deeply conditioned, and I will speak for myself, so deeply conditioned to look to others for approval. There are times even now where I will catch myself saying something to my daughter where I'm like, oh my God, backtrack. I did not mean to say that. Don't think for 1 second what your friend at school is going to say about your shoes. Don't think for 1 second about whether grandma's going to like that your hair is brushed or not. Like, do not relinquish your beingness, your power, your worthiness to someone outside of you.
Yeah.
But we're conditioned to do that.
For sure. And the part that's crazy about it is we're actually giving that situation way too much credit as people. Because
For sure.
Most people actually don't care. We just think they care.
We're all too trapped in our own internal experience to have like more than 1 inch of thought about another.
Exactly. So
what shoes person someone wore.
I mean, it's crazy, like, to think about it that way, right? Like your example about like the moms at school, right? Like, you're worried about them thinking about you. They're worried about you thinking about them. And really nobody is thinking about each other at all. They're like, okay, I got to pick the kid up from school. I got to get him to hockey practice. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this, right? Like dinner, groceries, blah, 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 blah. Like, everybody is stuck in their own bubble, but we, for some reason, because of that conditioning of like, oh, we got to, seek this person, or we got to do this or whatever, right? Or like, my boss at work, he's got to think this way of me, instead of just being like, well, if he doesn't like me, then he'll probably fire me, and then I'll go find another boss that likes me and I can thrive under him. Right.
Yeah.
But that's like such a something that is just like paralyzing, and has been in my life, right? Like, again, back to like when I was playing hockey, it was like, well, whatever the coach said is what I felt about myself. Whatever the manager would say to me is how I felt about myself, because it's like, without that approval, right? You didn't, like, am I going to be on the team? Am I going to get traded? Or am I this, whatever. And so, when they come down on the bench and they say you make a bad pass and they get in your face and like tell you you're a worthless piece of shit, you're like, well, I guess I'm a worthless piece of shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck in this mindset of, instead of like guys that I played with, that I am friends with still, they already had that a little bit of, ahead of the game, where like the coach comes out and says that to them. They're like, sucks you think that way. I don't.
Yeah.
So beat it, loser.
Yeah.
So again, it's just, what standard, who created the rules to this? It's like we basically like make up a game in our own minds that doesn't really exist, like in the actual reality of life,
Yeah.
So
It's so true. And there's so many qualifiers in the outside world to our worthiness, right? And they're provided readily to us. Things like the grades we get in school, things like the money that you make at a job, or the reviews you get online for your business, or there's so many qualifiers just waiting for us to assess our worthiness. And I think it's super important to be as considerate as possible of like, which of those qualifiers are we willing to choose and use? Because the truth is, what a boss thinks of me, if I like have the utmost respect for that person and find that person to be full of integrity and virtue and kindness and work ethic, then maybe that person is a beneficial mirror for me, not a measure. but a mirror for me to utilize to assess how I show up. But the truth of the matter is that, like, there are probably 3, 4, 5 people in my whole life who I would ever even if the assessment that I received from somebody maybe didn't land really well, like I didn't feel like it was a delicious, thank you for sharing that. And it might feel bad for a second, and I might be like, oh, see, there's another, check mark that proves that I'm not good enough. At the end of the day, the only people I'm willing to, like, over time and consistently accept any sort of worthiness feedback from are literally the people that live in my house, and probably like you. I mean, there are like so few people
Yeah.
that, to me, and I mean, even as I'm saying that, I'm like, mom and dad are going to feel bad when they hear that, but it's not anything about that. It's not a measure of how much you love or care about somebody. It's just, am I willing to utilize that person's assessment as a mirror of what I see as valuable for me?
Mm-hmm.
And we give that away way, 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 way. I won't speak for anyone else. I historically have given that away so readily to so many people. I mean, I remember every teacher in high school, like, I wanted to be the perfect student to every single teacher that I had. And I
Yeah.
can tell you, the 3 or 4 of them, I actually gave a rat's ass what they thought about me. And all of the rest of them, it was just a way of measuring my own sense of goodness, quotes.
Yeah.
And that's as a teenager. Like, how early in our lives are we starting to hand over our worthiness to people whose assessment doesn't matter?
Well, I think right away, and I know for myself, and I think this is, one like very clarifying point too. For me, when I had been in those zones of like really seeking others' approval, it's because I know that I'm falling short, and
Mm,
instead of taking the ownership for myself, right? It's like, well, I know so and so, he'll pump me up, he'll tell me I'm awesome, even though I'm not, you know, or even the other way of it, right? Like, oh, I'm going to put myself in this scenario and I know I'm going to get ridiculed, but I feel so shitty about myself that actually will like fuel that fire, which that's what I want.
yeah,
You know?
will match what your experience is. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the only way that we can create that worthiness for ourselves is, again, through struggle and through hard work, right? And I think that's a big thing that really needs to be clarified, is like, if you don't like your boss or whatever, like, that's fine, but that doesn't give you the right, especially if you're talking about your own worthiness, to like show up and go half-ass and do a crappy job and whatever, right?
Right.
Because then you're the one that loses in that scenario, and you're feeding that fire of, I am crappy.
Yeah.
You know, my boss thinks I'm crappy, and I am crappy. I just got fired because I did a half-assed job and I didn't try. And I think that's the big thing. Like, if you want to create your own worthiness, because I would even take it a step farther for myself. I know to be like the best version of myself. No, I can't seek that from anybody,
Mm,
you know, except for my faith in God, right? And then my own personal work that I do every day, me with me.
yeah.
Because I seek that from my wife. Like, I think about this a lot, and we can laugh about it now, but like, when I was playing and when I was in that kind of funky stage of my life, like, I used to tell her, if you ever left me, I would just be like, just like all these like such pathetically weak statements. But that's because I didn't have the ability to look internally and be like, man, the F up, dude. Like,
Mm,
start getting after it, Like, yeah, these things are going bad, but it's your fault,
mm,
you know? So for me personally, right? And I love my wife and my kids and my family and
yes.
all that, right? That has nothing to do with it. But it's a very strange thing when you tell people, like somebody says to me right now, what is your priorities? And then when you say my faith in Jesus one, my personal time with myself two, then my wife, then my kids, right? They're like, whoa, you selfish prick.
Yeah.
You're like, well, yeah, dude, I have to be selfish because then I can be my best version of spouse possible. I can be the best dad possible.
Yeah.
They get the best version of me instead of me needing them to be like, hey, dad, you're great.
Yeah.
Well, am I? Am I really? You know?
Yes.
So, it's a weird thing for people. But again, why is it weird? Because the world tells you family number one, job number two, well, job number one, family number two, whatever, right? If you look Google priorities for your life, it would be something like that. It would never say like your faith, then yourself, then your wife. They'd be like, whoa.
Yeah. It's a super
So
important
create
point.
your own reality. I mean, that's the point of all this, nobody's way of doing something is right.
Right. It just is.
It is. Yeah.
It just is. So you talked about hard work, embracing struggle. I'm
Hmm.
going to throw one other quality or way of experiencing and tapping into this, which is simply awareness. I
Yeah.
do not think there's any possible way to start experiencing the ways you give your own worthiness away or the ways in which you're seeking worthiness from others or other inputs unless you quiet the frick down. Like,
Hmm.
there's no way to know where to start until you can start to slow your brain, bring yourself inside of yourself. It is such a unique experience introducing people to things like breath work and meditation, or even like yoga, or just something that like you have to feel and breathe and be quiet and like not seek like noise outside of yourselves. We are so deeply conditioned to like be so extremely outside of ourselves at all times. And I've been there. So there's no judgment of any kind. I have been living in those shoes for years and years and years. But the remarkable thing is the second that you can start to literally just be awake inside your body, you finally have a chance to see, where are the places that this happens? Who are the people that I look to and are expecting to provide my worthiness to me? Where do I actually really feel good? And I could amplify my way of being in that space as a way of that internal experience of goodness and worthiness. But it is impossible to do unless you create the space to start experiencing it. Otherwise, you're just on the freaking hamster wheel, that thing's going 100 miles an hour, and there's no way to get off until some outside thing slows it down. And guess what? That outside thing is going to fucking suck. It's going to be
Hmm.
an injury, an illness, a death, something awful is the thing that will stop it from the outside. So the only other alternative to that is to opt in to slowing down yourself internally.
We've talked about this a million times, but again, this stuff is simple, but it's not easy.
Absolutely.
And like we just started our high school hockey season, and it's like that's the kind of stuff, right? That even we talk to with those guys is like we want to be really, really good at the simple, because that's actually harder to do if you think
For
about it.
sure.
But when we're talking in the context of this, right, of like that's why I like the morning routine, right? A million different things you read from the Bible to every self-help book that's ever existed. Morning routine, evening routine. Why do they say that, right? Because if we're starting off our day, literally our feet hit the ground and it's chaos, like boom, kids got to go, this, boom, how would you ever have any expectation that your day is going to go well. If it starts in chaos, it's going to continue in chaos. It's going to end in chaos, and you just be chasing your tail the whole time.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you wake up an hour early before anybody else in your family does, right? And then all of these things that you can do, right? Like you said, breath work, meditation. For me, it's like some kind of cold therapy, right? Cold tub, cold shower, something that like in the morning is the last thing that you want to do.
Yes.
Freezing cold right now. I don't want to do that, but
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because it's going to allow my brain to open up and see like what comes out, and then that's where I can kick in my breath work and my meditation after I do that, because I just did something that was the last thing on earth that I wanted to do after getting out of a warm, nice bed. A freezing cold shower. I don't want to. Well, tough shit. Get in.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, holy crap. And then stuff starts, it just gets my mind working. Then in that time of silence, all of these thoughts can be witnessed with, like that intentional practice of like, why do I think that way?
Yeah.
Does this one thing make me so afraid, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
I'm excited that this podcast is brought to you by mkforhealth.com. Have you been looking for a powerful antioxidant to help support your immune health? Hello, of course we have. Look no further. mkforhealth.com offers an amazing product called Nutrimetrics Opc3. This product is an isotonic-capable food supplement chock full of powerhouse antioxidants. Ingredients like citrus extract bioflavonoids, bilberry, grapeseed, red wine, and pine bark extracts, all incredible antioxidants. Then you have the OPCs. The oligomeric proanthocyanidins are bioflavonoids found in fruits, vegetables, and certain tree barks that have exceptional benefit to the human body. Studies have shown that these OPCs are up to 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times more powerful than vitamin E in neutralizing free radicals. Hello, sign me up for that. Nutrimetrics Opc3 also contains the only isotonic form of pygaginol in the world. Number 1, remember, isotonic, readily absorbed. Number 2, pygaginol, my new favorite word, is a natural plant extract from the bark of a French maritime pine tree, and it is the most clinically researched and potent bioflavonoid found. If you're ready to support your immune health and modulate inflammation in your system, all with incredible powerhouse antioxidants, natural extracts, and ingredients, this is your product. Go to www.mkforhealth.com to purchase your Nutrimetrics Opc3 today. That's www.mk4health.com.
It's an important mindset shift to say, not only am I not going to give power of my internal experience to the external, now I'm going to, step 1, just experience my internal state. Step 2, I'm actually going to draw in the goodness that is around me, that lives in the universe, that's in the fresh air, that lives in nature, the light that is God, that is goodness. And I'm going to draw it in. You're walking around with that all day. Like, it's going to be real hard to feel crappy about yourself because you have filled yourself with goodness because you decided to.
Yeah. That's why they say to do some type of a gratitude practice every day, right? When you're into the mindset of gratitude, it's impossible to be negative.
Yes.
So when you're asking for, or you're giving thanks to other people or to God or whatever it is, you feel great.
Yeah.
And that generosity, it comes back tenfold. It really does. But with all that stuff, right? Like that's the awesome part about it, is that this is something that we do have control in.
Yes.
Of like speaking for myself personally, right? If I'm challenging myself mentally and physically every single day, I feel very, very worthy. Right? Super connected to God, super connected to my body, my mind, my spirit, just like dialed in. right? And then it's like freight train running down the street. I don't care if you like me or hate me, good for you, right?
Yeah.
But the second that if I dial that back and I'm not in the mindset of pushing myself or leaning into my own fears or doing the things that I know are super hard and super shitty, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I wonder what, so-and-so at work's thinking about me today, or
Yeah.
whatever. And the great part about it is now I can use that as an indicator of what aren't you doing, Jake?
Yeah.
Right? Nothing else other than that. What's missing right now? Are you not, or have you gotten off being super connected to your faith? What's going on with the workouts? Have you been pushing yourself? Is there any complacency in your life? Right. It gives me the ability to start to go through and hit the checklist of the things that I know what could creep in to make me feel not worthy.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, oh yeah, get down to here. I'm like, you are kind of being complacent. Wonder why. Well, let's sit there, let's breathe, and let's just think about it for a minute.
Yeah.
Something pops up and they're like, oh yeah. And that actually has been scaring me for a week. And I just basically let it control my life.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Here we go. Right.
Yes.
I mean, but it's so back to your point of using it as a tool, right? It can be that you just have to be very, very aware of it. Right. Because on the other side of that coin, that could be, well, I backed off my workouts for a week. Now here I am 3 months later, haven't touched a weight, haven't got off the couch, fat, I'm slobby, right? Everything, I'm pointing the finger at everybody in my life, like your fault, your fault, your fault, right? As I sit here and hammer beers and eat chips and haven't prayed a week and months. And, it's like, well, your fault.
Yeah.
Not to be not sensitive about it, but I mean, that's the deal. I'm speaking to myself when I'm saying that of nowhere else to look but you, dude.
Right.
There's nowhere else to look. They can tell the kids all the time. If you're blaming somebody, basically what you're doing is saying, I didn't give it a very good effort.
Yeah.
Or I didn't give it my best chance, or I didn't give it my best or my all. And instead you're going, well, the teacher didn't teach me that. Oh, really? Pretty sure they did. You either didn't listen, you didn't write it down, you didn't try your hardest, right? Yeah. If you want solutions, take ownership of your own crap.
Yeah.
And
I think
solutions for it.
The language can sound kind of rough, but I actually think it's super empowering to shift the mindset of no one else gets to control my experience.
Yeah.
I am the only person responsible for every ounce of what my life experience is in this moment, in this day, in this month, year, lifetime, whatever. The only person. And not that's so much, so much responsibility. No, it's exciting. It's life-giving to think, you know what? Every single day I get to choose. I get to choose how I want to be, how I want to feel. I work with a lot of people who they have never for 1 second considered that emotions are something that you can control. There is a broad understanding of emotion as it is something that is almost given to us. No. Our brain assigns meaning to the sensations that arise in our body, and we cement them through behavior that matches it. I get to choose that every single day. I feel sad today. Interesting. Do I want to feel sad today? Is that useful to me? Maybe it is. Maybe I got some things I need to work out. Maybe I have some stored energy that needs to move. Maybe I need to have a good cry. Who knows what it is? But just let's be clear that I'm choosing that.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, that is a new thought experiment to say that I get to control my experience.
And that goes back to your stand, right? Or your purpose. Because if you put your faith in people or in earthly possessions, The unfortunate thing is it will let you down.
Yes.
It will 100% of the time. And look at what's going on in our country. If you're so dialed into like, I'm in this group, this is my group, right? Politically, whatever. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to get let down. The other side might win. You might be in conflict always with the opposing part of your belief. There's nothing to gain.
Yeah.
You know, you've put your faith in people and in an earthly cause or in the pursuit of money or whatever it is. It will always let you down, always.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that stand, that strong stand, right? Again, for me, my faith, right? That is where it's rooted, like strongly, like that will not let me down. It won't.
Right.
And then it gives me that, like I said a million times today, the foundation to then go and propel my life and suck every ounce of my potential out of every single day, knowing that I'm going to fail and I'm going to struggle and I'm going to mess up and I'm going to do all this stuff, but I can always go back to that and I can always start there. Boom, back to square one. Let's go.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not seeking that from any other person, which then allows me to internally be like, okay, right? If I do these things, if I get after my life and if I work my ass off in everything that matters, then here we freaking go. Let's see what we're capable of.
Yeah.
And guess the harsh reality of it is there are people in this world that hate my guts. Good for them, right? Some of it's probably well-deserved from how I used to live my life, you know? And if I saw some of these people, I'd probably say, hey, I'm really sorry. I actually was an asshole.
Yeah.
Right? I drank too much. I was a piece of shit, whatever. I mean, yeah, you're right. But I'm not like that anymore. That person is dead. This person is alive.
Yeah.
So let go of your hatred for me and move on. Right.
Yeah.
So, I just think that that's just such an important thing of like, you cannot put your faith in anything that is here. You can't.
Yeah.
Fleeting.
Well, it changes like the wind. And that's,
Yes.
when we outsource our sense of worthiness, our sense of goodness to the possessions that we have or the rank that we somehow have, this is something that has always been so hard for me, but it just is true. Like, even God forbid something awful happened to my husband or my children, like, it would be such a miserable experience, but at the end of the day, I would still be here and I would still be a whole human without them. And that is like, it's heartbreaking to even say out loud, but it is the truth. And I can't outsource my sense of beingness to something outside of me. They cannot be me. They aren't me. I don't want them to be me. Only I get to be me. And as we start to give, I'm almost imagining like pieces of a puzzle, as we start to give Instagram a piece of us, and we start to give the moms at school a piece of us, and we start to outsource my goodness to a piece of it goes to my children and a piece of it goes to my husband. All of a sudden, the wholeness that I have as a human isn't available to me because I have literally handed it to other people. But my wholeness is my innate nature. I can't give pieces of me to other people.
And what gets lost in that is the point that is not bad. You're not saying, I don't love my husband. I don't love him.
Right.
You're actually saying the opposite. This is mandatory, right? If you, especially in the context of what we care about so much with the family dynamic, think about getting to a place with your family where everybody thinks that way and everybody is bringing their best version of themselves into the tribe.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. Can you imagine a unit of, in our house, 5 people, 5 whole humans, feeling whole, feeling worthy, feeling capable and full of the capacity that lives within each of them, and how that unit can serve everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? It bleeds into every place that you touch. It bleeds into the conversation you have on the bleachers at a basketball game. It bleeds into the classroom where your kid shows up and shows up as a whole person. But it takes patience and a willingness to see it through. Like I think all the time, because I think in parenting, especially maybe more so than in any other arena in our life, we are so deeply conditioned by our experience of being parented that it takes like really conscious effort if you want any part of that to feel different. And something like a particular area in our whole household that I'm really super cognizant of is the language that we use. When I pick my son up for basketball, I don't say, "What did your coach say?" I say, "How do you feel about your effort today? What went well? What would you have liked to go better?" Like, I'm working so hard to give them the language where they aren't outsourcing their opinion of themselves to other people around them. And it's so, I've had this conversation a little bit recently of like, oh, well, at some point the outside does matter. Like they have to try, they have to perform, they have to whatever. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be full of effort and committed to the things they sign up for. And I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is the basketball coach a good guy? He is a good guy. But should he be evaluating my son's worthiness? Never.
No,
The only
he can evaluate his effort and his commitment,
yes,
everything a coach should do, but he has no say in the kid's worthiness.
right.
And at the end of the day, if you don't work hard at what you're doing, you're not supposed to be doing it. That's God's way of saying,
100%.
like this isn't your path, find something else. Because
Right.
if you're obsessed with what you're doing, you will not work your hardest at it.
Totally.
So,
And there's a super funny example I'll give on that. Our middle son is obsessed with Greek mythology. I could not give a rat's ass about Greek mythology. Like, it's interesting when he talks about it because he knows everything, but I don't care. That kid would stay up all night, every night, reading about Greek mythology if I let him. And that's the kind of passion that it's like, does it actually matter if your kid shows that on the soccer field? If they don't care about being at soccer, let them find the thing that they like want to pursue with the whole of them. And not because it fits in some box of what society says is important, but because it like fuels the fire that's in them. And that's another way to stop outsourcing their worthiness to other people and other practices and other like boxes that they're supposed to meet.
well, this is a big thing too, going back to the piece of like seeking this inwardly and being very, very intentional to do this yourself. Because at the end of the day, our kids are their own people. They're not an extension of us. So most people, and I've been very stuck in this myself, most people, when they watch their kid on a sporting event not try, that's almost like them feeling like, I don't try. And oh my God, parents are going to look at me and be like, hey, why does your kid try? Oh, right. So there's the ego piece of it, of like, my kid reflects me. That's a super hard thing. But again, that's why you have to do the work on yourself, because if you don't feel worthy, you will seek it that way, right?
Yeah, it'll bleed everywhere.
Even if your kid is a star, that shouldn't make you feel like a star, because you actually aren't doing jack shit. You're sitting in the pictures watching your kid perform. So you can be super proud of that, and you can be super engaged in the process of it, but it has no value for you at all because it's not you. You get to foster that kid, and you get to help them grow and help them succeed and help them with the obsession. Like, that's your job as a parent, is to steer, not to be like, this is what you're doing, this is how you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. But that shouldn't make you feel good or bad about yourself.
Right. And that's how we get into the trap, like from a very early age, right? Of that someone else defines my worthiness, because of this pattern that exists everywhere, everywhere, of even like as a child recognizing like, oh, wow, when I don't perform at that thing, like I go home and it's not super fun to hang out with my parents. Oh, I have now outsourced my goodness, my worthiness to the opinion of other people about a thing that I only sort of care about.
Yeah. And what if the language was, like you said, how important language is? Instead of like, if you were watching your kid do something like a sport and they weren't working hard, instead of saying like, why aren't you working hard? Hey dude, I noticed that, you were today's game, like it just didn't seem like you were that engaged. Like what's going on? Are you having a bad day, or is this not fun for you? Right? How you ask the question, you'll get the actual answer if you ask the intentional question of like, is this actually something you like?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, why don't you work hard and you're an embarrassment to the family, whatever people say.
Yeah.
It doesn't, that answer is going to be like, I'm sorry, Dad, next game I'll try my hardest. And really in his head, he's like, I hate this stupid ass sport.
Yeah.
So
And then it creates a system where you set up the psychology of like the child has identified, I actually don't enjoy this, and yet I am required to perform at this thing that I hate.
yeah.
And guess what? That cycle just repeats itself over and over and over and over until you become awake enough to realize that you're in it, right? Like then you go to the college that you're supposed to go to, and then you get the job that you're supposed to have, but is miserable to you and you absolutely hate. Like this pattern, and as parents it takes like you said, your own personal work, because otherwise it's not from any ill intent. It just is. This pattern bleeds from us to the people that we love and care about the most, simply because we are not awake to the fact that we can do something about it and we can do something different.
Well, and how about teaching your kids work ethic through just the lifestyle?
Yeah.
Right? It's how we live. We get up early. We do stuff that sucks. We jump in cold water. We get in super hot tubs or saunas or whatever. We work hard. We do our best. All of the things that you're basically using sports for, or whatever activity your kid is in, that's just simply lifestyle. And then you ingrain the skill set into them of like, hey, struggle is actually really good. Look what we do. We manufacture it for our family every day. We jump in that cold ass tub, right?
Yeah.
That's fun. There's going to be stuff in your life that's not fun, but guess what? This is how you get through it. You breathe, right? You take deep, deep breaths, and you really get into your mind, and you really figure out why this is pissing me off so bad, or why this is making me sad, or why this is doing this. And instantly you think a solution instead of, well, that person did this to me, this person did that to me. No, how am I getting myself out of this scenario?
Exactly.
So you're building that stuff in them with lifestyle, right? Because nowhere in this talk today is it we're us saying, hey, it's totally okay, just be yourself and do whatever. Yeah, do that, but as hard as you absolutely possibly can.
Yeah.
And bleed your potential dry.
Yeah.
That's okay. But being, woohoo, I'm myself and I'm this whatever, and I'm 700 pounds and I haven't left my house for, whatever, and I can't hold a job and I can't do this and I can't do that. No, that's not okay.
Right.
So, right. And that person for surely does not feel worthy.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why it is such an empowering shift in mindset to say, this is my job. I have the control here.
Yeah.
I get to decide what I'm opting into, who and how I'm willing to measure myself, and to release that judgment that constantly pulls us to consider what outside sources think.
Yeah.
And only use it to look inside. Like, it's so easy to say, oh, so-and-so showed up on the, thing today and they didn't even try. Like the second that comes out of my mouth, all I should say is, how did I not try today? Because if I saw it in somebody else, all I did was see it in me, And it's like,
Yeah.
the more we can start flipping that, flip it. What you see outside, bring it inside. Where you find worthiness inside, how can you grow that and build it and amplify it so that it bleeds out of you and like oozes your potential? I mean, instead of just that like wallowing of like, well, this is it. This is how it is. No,
Yeah.
that's how it is if you want to keep it that way. But if you don't, there's a million ways to start cultivating that
What wraps
internal
this,
sense of worthiness.
for sure. What wraps this all in a bow for me is do the work to find your stand, that driving force of your life. Figure it out. Do the work to figure it out. And then from there, be obsessed with your potential. What am I capable of doing? And go after that with everything you freaking got.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll be so focused on that you won't have the mind space to care what anybody else thinks, how anybody else is viewing you, right? Because you're on this mission of like, I'm gonna give this everything I freaking got.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wear this body out. Like it doesn't, right? I mean, so just
Yes.
that with everything you got, and
I'm going
when
to
those
do something
feelings do come up, just use them for your advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Use them as a positive, not as something to drag you down. I'm going to do something I've never really done before, but I'm going to do it just because the stand has come up so many times today. Saying and reading my stand is like part of my everyday practice. So I'm going to just share mine because I think it's important to see like what is the thing that's worth standing on. Like as you even say the word a stand, it's easy to say like, oh, well, my job's important to me and my house is important to me. Like, what am I standing on? Right. Like we got to get as crystal clear about that as possible. And it's not like a one and done experience. Like this is something that in the coaching work is so awesome doing with people because you just keep peeling back layer after layer after layer of what's true for them. So this is mine. Okay, I, Nicole Birchback, stand for making the family a sacred space. I serve my family with love and care to provide a safe environment for each individual to evolve to their highest potential and in their truest nature. I show up fully, act with intention, show curiosity in place of judgment, express gratitude, and act in love to conquer fear. This body through which I embrace the human experience is developed with the life force of breath, practices to expand awareness, trained to cultivate health and wellness, and connected to the higher power that lives within. My life is conducted in service to the Almighty. Through God's guidance, I know who and how to serve. My life is measured by the love and effort I put forth to doing good works. And every day, I just say, what's the thing that I'm like, this is true for me.
Yeah.
So, what's the thing that I'm doing that allows that to be true? And if the only thing I'm measuring my goodness on is, am I living up to that?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I told you before, I mean, mine's super, super simple. I'm trying to become more like Jesus Christ every day. Right.
Right.
And underneath that one little sentence, then it's flooded with all these subcategories, right? Like what does that actually mean? Like, well, how did he live his life? What kind of man was he? What kind of person was he? So there's all these lenses to view through. But if somebody put a gun to my head and asked me what is my stand, I'd tell them that. Just that's what I do every single day. So, and again, awesome part is right. You have a very descriptive written out phrase, right? I have basically 3 words.
Yeah.
Matter though. It just
Right.
whatever creates the action.
It's just what's
Whatever
true.
creates the action, do it. So
Right. It's just what's true. Yeah. All right. It's in you. It can only be found inside of you. We can stop outsourcing it now.
Yeah.
effective immediately. Our worthiness is no longer up for outsourcing. We're not shipping it to another country, another company, another person.
Nope.
Yeah. And just allowing ourselves to get quiet enough and embrace discomfort around every possible turn, because it's leading us toward like the perfectness that is freaking just waiting inside for all of us to find.
Big time.
All righty. Thank you guys for joining us today. Jake and I think could talk about this for a lot longer, but we will call it a day for today, and we'll catch you guys next time. Take care.